Tom got a call. He had been in the shopping center business. He got a call from a guy named Bill Seeley, who ran Scarborough Town Center. And he said, you know, when you were running Burlington Mall, you leased a store to a couple that had a coffee store. And we would really like a coffee store in Scarborough Town Center. In those days, there were no coffee stores around. And a coffee store, incidentally, in those days was entirely different than a coffee store you know today. Coffee store in those days was very much a dry goods store. And Mr. Gordon would come in and buy his pound of coffee, and it would be a very special blend, you know, a little this, a little that, Columbia, Kenya, whatever, and we would keep a note of that, or they would, and then next time in, he would be able to get the same blend. And we didn't have any money particularly, and Scarborough Town Center was offering us 154 square feet. I'll never forget it. It was a kiosk in the center of the mall in the food section of Scarborough Town Center. It's now been redesigned and it no longer exists, but it was a food court there. We went in and negotiated a lease, and Bill Seeley was prepared to give us a 10-year lease. We didn't want to take that much risk. We wanted a 7-year lease. When we renegotiated that lease, it was $120 a foot. Anyway, that was a different story. And through good lucks and good management and some kind suppliers, we managed to get that store built. And the store was really simple. It was just a square with some showcases, and again, dry goods. So there was, the front counter had bins that would mark Columbia, Kenya, Mocha, Java, etc. And we looked in the yellow pages, and we called all the coffee suppliers and bought the best price. And they came in those days, they came in a 5-pound sack, a paper sack with an outside stamp that said Columbia, Mocha, Kenya, whatever, and you put the Columbia in the Columbia. Pretty simple, right? We got going. Business was very slow, but the hours were long, and we had to hire somebody. So a couple of days into the business, we hired this woman who knew something about coffee. She walked into the store. She looked at the coffee beans, and she said, oh, they're all the same bean. The guy just changed the stamp. You want Colombian? Colombian. You want Kenya? Kenya. We knew nothing. Business was very bad, but we still didn't have a bookkeeper and didn't know that. So we opened 2 more stores. One in Scarborough Town Center and one conveniently located in Ottawa. Oh, my goodness. And lost money even quicker. And one day we were in Scarborough Town Center and commiserating about our business when we went into Baskin-Robbins. And I ordered my usual ice cream, and Tom sampled a bunch and ordered one, and he came out, and the 3 ideas that happened to change Second Gup happened right there. Tom said, you know, I sampled all those ice creams and bought an ice cream. Why don't we sample our coffee? People will see it tastes good, they'll order the coffee, and that'll be good. Talked about that for a while and thought how that might work, and then we said, why don't we charge for the samples? The margins are much better. And then the most important idea of all, why don't we charge more for our coffee than anybody else in the mall so that people will know they had a good cup of coffee? And the lineup started, and it never went away. Incidentally, I was out the other day to Burlington. I had to give a speech early in the morning, and I stopped in for coffee. And 2 coffees and 2 muffins were $9. They haven't forgotten the lesson. The lineup started and never went away. We sold hundreds of thousands of cups of coffee out of that kiosk, and we didn't have any running water. We had to figure out how to get water to that. I mean, it was a remarkable story of entrepreneurialism, and for another night, it's a complete story in itself. But the point is that we sold a lot of coffee. It changed the margins of the business. It changed the whole direction of the business, because now we were making money. And we began to open more stores, and we got up to our 7th store, 5th in Toronto. We had opened at Eaton Centre. For those who've been around Toronto for a while, you'll remember that Eaton Centre opened in 2 phases, Phase 1, Phase 2. We had already had a store in Phase 1. Our bank was the one with the green sign, we'll remain anonymous here, that was located in that shopping center. We were offered a location in the 2nd phase. We went to our banker, the one with the green sign. And we put our business case. He was our banker. And after 3 weeks, he called us and said, we've reviewed your application, Mr. O'Day, Mr. Culligan. We think that with 5 stores in Toronto, you've saturated the market for coffee stores in Toronto. So we are not going to lend you the money to open your next store. In fact, we think you should take your business to some other bank, and you've got 30 days to do that. For the entrepreneurs in this audience, you'll know that's a disaster when you hear that. But we scurried around, and there was guys with blue signs that helped us out very well, and they and we have made a lot of money since. But not everybody shares our vision as entrepreneurs, and this banker certainly didn't. And we went on to open stores, and then we began to franchise stores, and as we franchised stores, we became dominant players in the Canadian marketplace. We were able to take locations all across the country because they're relatively small volume stores, so by franchising we were able to manage the growth across the country. And while other chains at that time, Timothy's Coffee of the World, also existed in Toronto, they were bigger than us at that time, but we became much bigger than they because we were able to take locations all across the country. And we became the dominant players, as I said. We went into release space at various shopping centers across the country, and we already found when shopping centers were built, the second cup was already on the leasing plan. So negotiating leases didn't become easier, but spaces became available to us, and we were able to take them, and we were able to grow the business. We got up to about 70 stores, and things were going very well, and Success had visited, and Tom and I were doing very nicely. And then, as oftentimes happened with Success, Tom and I, in our partnership, we began to have divergence of opinion, and we had a shotgun arrangement in our shareholders agreement. For those of you who are not familiar with that, I'm sure many of you are. It was really simple. The person who offers to buy the other person puts a price on the shares and offers to buy the other person. The person who receives that offer has two choices. One, accept the money, or two, buy the other guy out at the same price. That's the agreement. I was absolutely certain that Tom would be, he's more risk averse than I, he would take the money and I would be left with the company. So my strategy was to offer him fair price. In fact, I even organized with the bank to make it reversible. Whoever picked up the shares could take the financing. Absolutely certain that I would get it. Well, Tom surprised me, of course, and he got the company and I got the money. 39 years old with more money than I could ever have dreamed was possible. And I left and I went off to start my own business. And my business plan was to be bigger and better than Tom. It's a very good way to make a small fortune if you start with a large one. And I did. Fortunately, sanity prevailed at some point and things settled down and I began to do my own thing. But I began to become bitter about the decision. In spite of the fact that I loaded the shotgun, in spite of the fact that I made the offer, I fully admit that, but as I was driving around, I found myself trying to avoid second cup stores. And in Toronto, that's a bit of a trick, you know. And I started to get this football in my stomach, this angst. And I knew I couldn't live with that. I had to do something about it. I was driving my car one day, and I guess I was listening to CBC because they talked about a retreat. I'd never been on a retreat. I've been on seminars and other things at retreat houses, but I'd never been on a sort of, quote, retreat. So I went home, and geez, maybe. So I knew Father Bill up at Manresa, which is just outside of Winnipeg, and I phoned him. Jesuit retreat house, and I phoned him up and I said, I'd like to come up. And he said, well, why don't you come up Sunday? Plan on staying until Friday. And we'll talk when you get here. So I said, fine. So I came up and I brought some stuff, and he and I met, we chatted, and I told him my story about the second cup and about the sale of it and how bitter I was becoming. And he said, look, Frank, I don't know what's going to happen, but he said, the objective of the week is for you to drive out the gate on Friday and be at peace. Whatever that means. He said, there are some rules. So this is a silent retreat. There are other people on the property. They'll be wandering around. You don't talk to them. They won't talk to you. You eat in silence. The only time that you'll talk to anybody is at 5:30 every day. We'll get together and we'll chat about whatever came up. Okay? So he gave me some stuff, and I had some stuff, and I went back to this little cell of a room, and I sort of did some reading and tried to settle down. It was a beautiful fall week. It was a week that, you know, kids were back in school, and it was, the Manresa properties are large, and it was quiet and beautiful and sunny and all that. And so Monday I tried to sort of just settle down, and Tuesday, and by Wednesday, frankly, I was going nuts. In fact, at noon I thought, this is okay for Jesuits, but I'm out of here. But I'll be polite, and I'll see Frank or Father Bill at 5:30 and thank him for his efforts, and I'll get on my way and I'll try something else. So I sat down with him at 5:30 and I told him how I was feeling and where I was going. He said, now listen, Frank, I've listened to you Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and again tonight. I know that you're frustrated. I know that you want to leave, but I want to try one idea on you. It's a radical idea, but I want to try an idea on you. Maybe it'll fit, maybe it won't. He said, you told me during this conversation that while you were leading up to the shotgun arrangement and presenting the shares that you did some praying, and I said, yes, I did. He said, I think you're mad at God. I said, mad at God? How could that be? And anyway, we talked about it some more, and I said, all right, maybe I am. He said, you're in business. What would you do if you were upset with a supplier? I'd phone him or write him. Well, he said, God doesn't have a phone. So I went back to my room and I wrote, Dear God, I prayed for this, I got that, I think I got screwed, yours very truly. I didn't think he needed a lot of details. Went for a long walk. I got back to my room about 10:30, it was dark, and I went to sleep, and it's like a weight had gone away for some reason. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and turned on the light, and I walked over to the table, and I picked up the pen, and I wrote, Dear Frank, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Signed, God. And I put down the pen, and I thought, I came from Skid Row. I came without hope. I came without any future. If somebody had handed me a piece of paper when I walked in the doors of that self-help group and said, write down your future, being in touch with tomorrow, I would have said, all I want is sobriety and a job. And what I got by simply following life was beyond anything I could have imagined. Do you trust me? Yeah. You know, that's been a great gift. Because I'm sure, like you, there has been many times that I've woken up at night with my kids or with my business or some of the challenges that I've had in life. And I've woken up at 3 or 4 in the morning wondering how I was going to overcome what appeared to be crisis. And I find my crises are always much bigger at 4 in the morning than when the sun comes up. You know? And I find myself wandering around the house wondering what I'm going to do. And the little slogan comes through, do you trust me? Go to sleep. At 8 in the morning, those problems are always halved. And I've yet to have a problem that I haven't been able to solve. I have not had a problem since then that I haven't been able to solve.